Hey guys, welcome back to In Light of the Gospel. In today's episode, I talked to a young friend of mine named Tony Fehr. I think many of you will be acquainted with him already. If not, I think you'll be in for a treat here. So we recorded this podcast right here outside on our farm, so you'll hear some chickens in the background and some dogs. I'm working on perhaps creating a studio / office. Maybe eventually I'll be inside there, but for now I do with what I have. Right here is where Tony Fehr was sitting when he first understood the gospel, and I saw the reality of the gospel come over his face, if I can put it that way, and he was overjoyed with the goodness of God, and it was a real blessing to see him transform from a young, troubled soul to a liberated, strong, courageous man that he now is today. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you. Here we are sitting in my backyard. Fire pit is right behind the camera. And it was about 7 years ago that we were sitting here and I was preaching through the book of Romans. I remember very clearly being in Romans chapter 6, speaking about our crucifixion together with Christ, and that when Christ was buried, we were buried with him and we were raised again. And I could see the lights come on in Tony's eyes. And as my wife and I went inside that evening, we discussed what had happened, and we're like, I'm pretty sure he got saved. We'll hear more of that, I'm sure, in the next little while. But something changed in his mind, and the way he responded with understanding, it always tells me that, okay, this guy seems to understand the cross. So, but anyway, he's younger than me, but we've become good friends, and I really appreciate him. He's helped out with the church quite a bit, teaching and preaching, and he's very gifted in many ways, and he's become very successful with his car sales. Hopefully we'll get into that a little bit. But I like to start off with a bit of their history so we can kind of learn who Tony Fehr is. So as a young boy, maybe 5, 6, 10 years old, what's interesting about Tony Fehr?
Well, I was going to public school, and I thought I was a pretty decently smart kid. And I was looked after really well from my parents. I remember growing up, I had a lot of. It felt like my parents were really strict. They didn't want to let me do sleepovers. They didn't want to let me do this and that. And a lot of even the field trips, for some reason, I wouldn't be able to go to those too. I didn't understand actually how we actually did struggle financially quite a bit. But when you're a kid, you're a kid. You don't think about stuff like that. So I thought they were just being strict. And now I look back and I look at my dad and how he was never abusive to us. He never he wasn't a drinker or a smoker. There was always food on the table and clothes on our backs. And so I mean I could get into it how there are some ways where I feel like I missed out on some things and how I was mistreated. But I think now just being a Christian and looking back, and I said, wow, I had it good. I was I went to public school. I didn't speak Low German, which I think my parents are still disappointed to this day. But it's hard to do that.
You could easily have a conversation in German still.
A little bit. Every once in a while, I do get a referral from a customer at the dealership who just maybe recently came in from Mexico or speaks stronger German than English, and I can grasp my way through it, but it's not strong. I can't enunciate properly, but I do what I can, and I can understand it very well. So
okay, yeah. Well, I knew your brothers growing up. John, who recently has testified to being saved and freed from drugs. I went to school with him, and I remember seeing your brother Frank. I worked with him for a little while at North Star. Back then, he was a self-proclaimed Christian, very excited about the faith, involved in the church, and then in many years later, he became a strong, avid atheist. And I remember your brothers getting into trouble, and I heard that you did as well. When I met you, you had just come out of some trouble and whatnot. So one of my friends told me he used to hang out with your brothers, and he said your brothers really manipulated you and kind of egged you on and provoked you and told you to lie to your parents and all kinds of stuff. So what was it like growing up as one of the younger ones in a family of older brothers?
You know what's funny, actually? I don't know which brother it was that I was talking about this with, but they asked me if I remembered stuff like that, and I said I honestly don't really remember much. I'm sure there could be it, but I don't remember much. And I know I was a big liar. I lied to my parents all the time. I was, everything from deceitful as sneaking into their bedroom while they're sleeping and going up into the one cupboard where I know they had the school snacks, and I'd be taking the school snacks.
Oh, this was me.
And I was a big, I'd taken small change from my mom's purse. Never dared my dad's wallet because I knew what would come after that. Like he wouldn't take that. And so yeah, I lied a lot. I ran away a lot. Just I don't know. That's just kind of who I was. And then when I got into a teenager, I'll tell you what. The reason why my rebellion started stemmed from a fear of death.
Is that right?
That's the reason
You can
why.
make that connection clearly.
Yep, and I would even say that to my friends when they saw that I was willing to take my rebellion to another level, where it's not just doing a little bit of vandalism or lying or doing a little shoplifting. It's getting into some serious crimes and drug addiction. Where I said, hey, look, I'm going to hell anyways. And I had spent many nights crying because I was scared. I knew that I was a sinner. I knew that I was guilty of something, and I had no idea how I was going to be forgiven, if
But
that was
at this
possible.
stage in your life, you hadn't committed a lot of big sins, right?
No, just being a troublesome little kid. But then I said, I'm so terrified. Why don't I just live it up?
Hmm.
Why don't I just live it up and just let this life take me wherever I can?
Because if you weren't being promised some kind of hope as a sinner,
Yeah.
and you just know that I am a sinner. I'm a bad kid. I'm not listening to my parents. I often disappoint them.
Yeah.
So why not just?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But
I
my
took the other
parents,
approach.
was that? Oh, really?
I was a good kid, but at the same time, I was very sneaky. I would always snoop my parents' Christmas gifts. They'd hide them in the closet.
Yeah.
One year, I was sure I knew what I was getting, and ended up they had hid my cousin's gifts in our closet and our gifts at their closet.
There you go.
So I was pretty disappointed when I got what I got. So
Yeah. No kidding. Well, yeah, like, and my parents were really disappointed in that too, because I remember even like the times when they had to get me out of the police station, and
times.
there was one time, yeah.
Okay.
So and the times that I'd come home drunk and high, and I've been driving, and other kinds of trouble I had gotten into.
So this is like 16, 17
Yeah,
years old
16,
now.
17, maybe I'm jumping too far ahead,
That's fine.
but they would say, we just don't understand, because I actually was a good kid, but they didn't understand the fear I had in my heart. And I was really disappointing them. Like, I actually don't think I was a disappointment until then
I
to
see.
them. So they're just like, you're throwing away your life. And it's like, well, exactly. That was what I was doing.
Interesting.
I didn't know what I had in store for me as a life. So, yeah.
That's interesting what being raised under strict religion will do to people, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
we understand our sinfulness way sooner than what is actually deemed sinful.
Yeah.
Like you now as an adult might look at a kid who's a little bit troublesome and maybe causes some ruckus in school classes,
Mhm.
or isn't always listening. We're like, oh, he's just a kid.
Mhm.
But at your age, you already knew that there's guilt with this. There's
That's right.
I'm being watched by my parents. They think I'm bad. I know that God must reflect what my parents think.
Yeah.
So that I am a bad kid, right? And you
Right.
feel sinful much more quickly than, say, a kid raised in just a secular understanding.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. That's pretty much exactly my mindset. Growing up and from being a pretty well nice kid to getting into some rebellion, and then getting into quite a bit of trouble as a teenager, and really turning my life into something that was broken and destructive for everyone around me.
So I know you've told your story several times. I didn't hear all this stuff as a young child, but from there, it sounds like things just kind of started spiraling down.
Mhm.
And looking from the outside, probably you just look like a teenager trying to sow his wild oats, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so.
But from the inside, it sounds to me like you started feeling like your life was just ending.
Yep. Yeah, there was some circumstances. Don't want to get too much into it, but I made I would even say to my mom and stuff that if this and this happens to me, I'm probably going to end my life. And there are times when I actually would think about it. And I think that's when I was probably the most addicted to drugs, and was really broken and didn't know how to share what I felt with anybody. I felt so distant from God. I was still actually reciting the same prayers that I learned as a
Los
kid.
mich diese, unser
Los mich diese
Vater.
nach dem Binnen, yeah, all the high German prayers that I didn't quite understand what they meant, and you would just utter them, and then you're done, and then, but it never made anything feel better. And the thing is, I remember growing up in Sunday school, I actually knew, like, I was really good in Sunday school. I knew how to answer all the stories, and I knew Bible stories because I'd grow up, we didn't have a TV,
Right.
so I had these children's Bible stories, and
I read the same ones.
read all the Bible stories.
Those blue Bible story books.
Yep.
There's a set of 10.
So I knew actually the stories of the scripture very well, but I never knew God. He was just a distant, scary, still sovereign,
almost
God.
tyrant.
Yeah, tyrant that I don't think I would ever have any access to. It's too late for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what started the downward spiral there? You said addicted to drugs. Were you like daily on something?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people probably even watching this would maybe scoff at this, but so it started when me and my friends, we wanted to buy our first case of beer. We were 15, and just 3 15-year-olds drinking a 2 for a beer. That was a crazy day. Yeah, and then you do that once a month, and then let's find some weed, and then we put that in a pipe, and we had we had our fun with that, and then and I just had maybe a very addictive personality, and I just wanted to keep it going. But it wasn't too long after that it was a crutch to actually take my mind off of how broken and sad I really was. And then obviously doing more drugs is only going to make you make more decisions. So yeah, I would say that I was actually addicted to marijuana. And then actually that did get into some harder weekend party drugs. Like I tried the cocaine and heavy pills
But
and
those
stuff.
ones you didn't get really fully hooked on,
No,
eh?
no, it was mostly because
Thank
it
God.
was expensive. It was expensive, and I didn't really understand the appeal. Like that's where I was like, well, even this is too dangerous. This is wild, right?
Hmm.
So yeah,
Interesting. So I remember we started a youth group, and we were reaching out almost all to people outside the church. There was maybe one or two people from our youth group that actually attended our
yeah,
church, like
yeah,
John Dyke's daughter.
yeah,
Mike Martins was there
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
But other than that, it was all people from outside the church, either Old Colony or Summerfield or whatever, and ended up being a bunch of your friends that
yeah,
started coming around.
yeah, yeah. Friends of this cat.
What are we going to do with this thing?
So yeah, that was it. I mean, my friends who I got in, who I was that was that same group we got into trouble with, and they desired to get away from that a lot earlier than I did, and and they were inviting me for a while, and for a long time I was saying stuff like, no, I'm not really interested in that, and I was being polite to them. But when I got to a point where I was broken and I thought I've got nothing left to live for, and my friends can see that I'm broken, and they just keep on inviting me to youth, why don't I just come to this youth? I mean, what else do I have to do? I don't like what I'm looking at in the mirror.
Maybe briefly touch on that topic. I know because you and Billy Martins both were coming to youth.
Yeah.
And you guys actually had like a restraining order where you
Yeah.
weren't allowed to be in the same
Yeah.
room at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah, we both got into trouble. So there was we set off a smoke bomb in an apartment building, and we thought it was a
You're
prank.
not smiling, are you?
Was that? No, no, I'm not. Now I am. But we did that. We thought it'd be a funny prank to play on our drug dealer, and we had no idea how powerful and potent that smoke bomb really was, and it caused a full out evacuation of the building, and the superintendent had to go to the hospital for smoke inhalation. He was trying to get people out, and the evidence was all there. They caught us on camera leaving the building in Billy's truck, and me and Billy and his brother and two others, and I got arrested first, and they already knew who else was involved, but they wanted to give me an opportunity to turn them in, and I turned my friends in, and
Oh boy.
I was charged with arson, and if it wasn't for my dad paying for an expensive lawyer, I actually would have spent a couple weekends in jail.
Was it? It was a criminal charge then.
It was a criminal charge, and actually, because I was the one who sent some text messages back and forth, it looked like I enabled the entire thing. Whereas I think we were all sort of equally involved. They were going to charge me the worst, and the rest was going to get mischief. So I actually had to get a lawyer to get that down. That's the details, but
Yikes.
yeah. So my
That's
dad,
scary.
yeah, had to pay for some lawyers, and it kept me out of prison for a couple weekends, and ended up having some pretty strict probation, and I couldn't be with Billy.
Interesting.
So
Just a couple weeks ago, I know you said you listened to the conversation I had with John Bam, and his brother Isaac
yeah,
started very similarly. He got into trouble with law several times, and I think instead of coming to the end of himself and finding a way out, he just dug deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where he was stealing cars pretty much every weekend,
yeah,
and drugs and alcohol
a
and
bank robbery
chasing,
maybe at some point too.
yeah, they got involved with so many different
Yeah.
things. So it's, your life could have taken two very different routes at that point.
Hmm.
But anyway, you ended up at youth, and somehow you managed to just come in the same room as Billy and
Yeah. Yeah, so
make it
yeah,
happen.
yeah, we're in a Christian youth group, and technically, that was all illegal, and we just were doing it anyways. So that's what happened, and we were a little bit concerned about that. Billy had a conscience because he recently got saved and found Jesus, and so he was like, I almost wonder if maybe we should alternate or not get together
He
as
asked me
much.
about
And
that at that point.
yeah, and so we just ended up riding out the probation and still hanging out, and then it all worked out okay. But yeah.
Nice.
So I started coming to youth then, but that was a very low point in my life. I had done some things, I don't want to get too specific, that I'm not at all proud of. Um, just never thought that I would go so low and to lose people I care about like that. And I was tired of the lies and the anger, and I remember I didn't even know. I remember dropping to my knees one day and I said, God, like I don't even know if you ever want to listen to me ever again, but I don't know what I have left in this life. If you have something to give me, I guess I'm willing to take it, but I just feel so broken and I don't have any desire to live anymore. Like this, I just so,
This is like 17, 18 years old.
actually 19, 20.
19.
Yeah. Cause I was, I was not, yeah, I was 19 when I got saved. So yeah. And
Wow.
then actually a couple weeks after that, I started coming to youth, and it opened up a lot of,
We were meeting at Willie Penner's place
yeah,
there, having bonfires, and I started the book of Romans, and
yeah,
I'm sure Willie shared sometimes. John Friesen shared a few times.
yeah,
and
Yeah.
you started getting bits and pieces of this idea that maybe God could still love me in spite of all my sin.
Yeah. It's interesting how you can grow up and you actually know the Bible really well, but to not actually know the gospel. Because, and I want to say actually on the record here, hopefully John and Willie hear this too, that I really appreciate those guys. There were some times where there's some miscommunications and I said some things I shouldn't have said and probably made them feel like I didn't value their friendship and their fellowship, but they mean a lot to me because I don't think I would have stuck around in youth if they didn't approach me. I'm not the kind of guy, and you're not the kind of guy either, to be the first person to
That's
introduce
right.
yourself to somebody. I wish I was more like that to make people feel comfortable in a setting, but they are that.
John was kind of what got the whole ball rolling.
Exactly, and John was key to me being saved. And then I remember there was like the first or second time I went to youth, and I'm like, whoa, like, is there an opportunity for me to get forgiven of my sins through Jesus? Like, can I actually be forgiven? And then him and his wife came up to me and told me, I said, hey, I just want to let you know, us and our Bible study group are praying for you. And I was just floored. Tears were just coming out of my eyes. I actually had to leave, and I was just driving my truck home.
It's a foreign thought, right?
Yeah, like, why would you have no idea who I am or what I've done? Why are you praying for me? And so obviously these are some nice people. People are treating me a lot better than I deserve. And then I kept going. So, yeah.
So then you ended up here that night. Do you remember clearly what it was that kind of opened your eyes to seeing that it was for you?
Yeah, I think this sort of sealed the deal because, like I said, I understood that there is forgiveness for the worst of the worst. And I don't know, at this point, I felt like I didn't know too many people that were much worse than I am. So I was like, okay, so there is forgiveness, but what do I do about my sin? Because I'm still addicted to pornography. I'm still smoking weed on a daily basis all day. I'm always numb by drugs. I feel so trapped in my sin. And then we talked about Romans 6, how when Jesus was crucified, we were crucified with him, and our old man was buried with him, and we're risen a new creation. I'm butchering this. You'd think I should know this better, but in a nutshell, I got this picture in my head that I was sitting in jail with the door wide open and shackles around my ankles and hands that were wide open, and I just thought, like, I can just walk free.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that all of my sins are now in the past and they don't have a hold over me anymore? You're
Right, because
telling
we
me
had
that,
gone through Romans 3 and 4, which deals with forgiveness and, where grace abounds.
yeah,
Where sin abounds, grace does much more abound.
yeah,
And then we get into Romans chapter 6, and you're still hooked, though, right?
yeah,
So
that's right.
that's neat.
So yeah, I'm just like, so I can actually be free from my sin. Like, I don't have, the sin has no more hold over me anymore.
It's now a choice.
Yeah.
Do I walk out of that jail cell,
Yeah.
or do I remain here pretending like I'm cuffed,
Yeah.
continuing in my sin?
And I think if there was any little inkling of still wanting that sin, because I've heard a lot of testimonies of people who've been held back from coming to Christ because there's still a little bit of desire for their sin. I was so done with it. I wanted out.
You just couldn't stop.
I wanted out. I had no more desire. I knew that there was a forgiving God, and I just said, well, I want whatever he has to offer, but this has to make sense to me first. And that's what did. And I'm opening my eyes wide. I'm like looking around, like, is nobody else reacting to this?
I remember you looking like you were just thrilled, and everybody else is like, yeah, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, because they've been Christians for a while, and a lot of them are actually, they grew up hearing the gospel in ways that I didn't. So I was undone, and then I remember I went to my mom the very next morning, bright and early. She's out doing gardening. I said, Mom, I'm a Christian now. She's like, well, haven't you always been?
Yeah, exactly. You were born a Christian. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's right. And I was like, listen, I'm not going to smoke weed anymore. Like, I did it yesterday, but I'm not going to do it today. I don't need to do it anymore. I'm free.
And you've never gone back.
Actually, there were a couple weeks after that, I broke my finger at Remtech. I broke it pretty bad, and I came home and I was having a bad day. I was in a lot of pain. I had a piece of steel crush my finger against the bed of a lathe, and I was broken in two places. And my oldest brother Frank was sitting there. I told him what happened. He's like, "Well, hey, he's like, I have something for the pain," and I actually did. I was a Christian, and I took a drag of this joint, and I had a buzz, and I was like, "Why on earth did I do that?" That's nothing more than what a Tylenol 3 could have done. I was in some pain, and it was very
And it
temporary.
could have been the road right back into the
and-
same habits.
Yeah, and I remember, and it was a couple nights after that, I went out with a couple of my friends, and they had started smoking weed a lot later than I did. I was trying to get them into it, and they didn't, and now they're really into it. And they said, "Hey, you're going to come smoke weed with us now that we do. You're going to as well." And I said, "Guys, I got no interest in that anymore. Let me tell you what happened to me." And so obviously, I didn't get invited to hang out with them anymore after that. Yeah, but yeah.
That's awesome.
So I was a new man. 100%.
Yeah, I remember your countenance changed. Before that, you would leave kind of sad and lonely. You told me that you'd often just drive home bawling your eyes out, didn't know what to do with yourself. After that, you were crying out of joy and gratitude, and peace had entered into your life.
Yeah. Had lots of awesome engagement after the. I remember we used to always open up the discussions after he had preached, and I remember me and Billy always had at least a couple questions, and then me and my friends for at least a year after youth, we'd go over to the Rempel's house, and we would be staying up till on a Friday. Some of us had to work the next day. We'd stay up till 3:30 in the morning. We'd be talking about our faith and how excited we are.
Oh yes.
Yeah, a lot has changed since then, but yeah, that was
Pete,
a cool
Ronnie,
Pete,
Ernie,
Ernie, yeah,
Willie.
yeah.
That
Nico
was
was younger,
good
but
times.
was with
Nico
us
was
too.
quite young. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really fun time. Yeah,
So that was 19 years old.
yeah.
I'm trying to think, how long was it actually till you met Jen? Because it seemed like quite a while, but when I think back now, it couldn't have been that long.
No, it must have been about 2 years. Well, I remember we went on our first date, August 13th, 2016, and it was a very weird time to go on a date because one of my friends I was just talking about that that wanted to get high with me was Jeremiah Cron, and he passed away a couple days before.
Oh
He got
shoot.
into a car accident, and I was so I had such a hard time with that. And here comes another
Another
visitor.
animal. Yeah, you can hear the dogs in the back and the roosters.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can drown some of that out on
That's
the
all right.
video.
So yeah, he had passed away, and then it was like a day after that we were at a wedding, and some
Sorry, pup. Okay, at a wedding.
yeah, and then some mutual friend of ours gave me her number. I had a crush on her for like a year, but I never
You
thought.
kind of saw her in the distance, but never really communicated to her.
Yeah, all my friends knew her because they went to school with her. I was a public school guy, so I didn't, and I never had the nerve to talk to her. I thought, well, she shouldn't be with a guy like me. Like I have too much of a past.
What was it about her?
She just looked very sweet. She looked very quiet. She was very different from a lot of girls. This kind of sounds weird, but I've always like when a girl is very loud and almost frivolous and super outgoing. It's never drawn me as something that's attractive.
Interesting.
So I would prefer someone that's different.
Well,
And there was something about her.
Book of Peter talks about women should have a meek and quiet spirit.
That's my wife. She is a meek and quiet spirit. She still is. That'll never change, and I appreciate
And
that.
that was just her natural demeanor, or do you
Yeah.
think that was stemming from her Christian faith already?
Yeah, she had been a Christian for a couple of years, and was never one to want to be like the center of attention. And she had some friends that were getting into some trouble, and she actually didn't have a desire to get into sin and start drinking and stuff. So she just withdrew herself from them, and then
Nice.
went with a couple other friends who were serious about their faith from an early age on. When they're not 14, 15-year-olds typically aren't too excited about God and want to devote their life to Christ. They want to live a bit more first, right? But she found some friends that did, and I think that's why she is where she is. Yeah.
Nice. So it took a year to finally get up the courage, and
Yep.
then at the wedding you asked her, or how did that work?
No, I was like a couple days. I actually texted her the next day, and I was saying to Billy, I'm like, why, one of my best friends just died in a terrible accident, and I'm still having a hard time with this. Why should I deserve a date with this girl? And Billy said, look, you should just do it, pull the trigger on it. And I called her up, and we had a date, and then we just started going on more dates and going to the same church. And she got baptized. I got baptized sooner than that, and then we got married. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens in between, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know we were involved with you guys kind of right from the start. You
Yeah.
guys had some relationship issues just before where it
Yeah.
almost seemed like maybe you guys were going to break it off
Yeah.
because of some misconduct on your part, perhaps.
for sure.
And it was really, really tough for her to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
And almost ended your relationship before it really began. I remember you just being totally devastated. You're like, this was my plan for my future. This is my life, right?
Yeah, like I had hidden sin. Like I had been a Christian for 2.5, 3 years already, and then I got back into some sins that I really wanted to keep in the grave. And before I knew it, it was something that was habitual, and it's something that one of the reasons why I wanted to not get involved in a relationship. I wanted to tackle this first, but I forgot about how to bring it to the cross and do it the right way.
Well, sometimes we understand the fact that I am free, 100% free. Like you walked free from drugs, you walked free from alcohol, you stayed out of the drug and party scene. And so you acted free in that regard. Yeah. And then sometimes because we're so free in one area, we kind of take liberties in another, and we think,
that could have been it.
I'm probably free enough to kind of play with this here. Yeah. And before you know it, you're acting like a slave again, enslaved to some lust of yours, and it can drag you down. So just because I say I am 100% free from sin, Jesus has made me free from sin, does not mean that I'm immune to temptation or that I cannot am not capable of committing sin. Yeah. My body is still the same body, but as I reckon it to be dead, as I count myself to be dead indeed to sin and alive unto God, I can walk free as well, right? So, and sometimes it takes discipline too, right? Where you're like, youthful lust, Paul says, flee youthful lust.
That's right.
So there's a time for that as well.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why he says to flee youthful lusts, and not. He doesn't really give us details on how to equip ourselves to fight it. He just wants you to get away from it, because it's a sin that's internal, and it's very
It's a
destructive.
sin against yourself, the
That's
Bible
right.
says. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
So then, I know you kept working at Remtech for a while. You did a few other little things here and there, but you eventually got into car sales, and this is where everybody seems to know your face from. So I thought it'd be a good thing to touch on.
yeah,
I didn't realize how driven you were. You know, I mean, at Remtech, you just did your job. You seemed to like it. You did
yep,
it well.
yep,
But here, there was an opportunity for you to almost like building your own company, where you were from the ground up. You were learning constantly. How do I sell better? How do I present myself better? How do I not just pressure somebody into a sale, but how do I build a client base where they will refer all their friends to me as well, right? So where does this drive come from, and how did you
yeah.
work the gospel into your work?
Well, one thing I've always been very competitive. So anything I do, when I was framing, when I was loading peppers, when I was working at Remtech, I always wanted to be the very best at what I did. And I didn't want. I felt like I always owed it to myself, and that was self-discipline. It's not like anybody else was challenging me. I just wanted to be the best. So the reason why I wanted to try leaving Remtech, which by the way, that's an excellent company, and if anybody asked me if they should ever go work there, I would say absolutely. That's a great opportunity. The bosses, the
I've
people
heard a
there,
lot of good things.
yeah, excellent place to work for. I did feel like I was going to hit a bit of a ceiling there as far as income, and
And even just for your
potential.
abilities, what else can I do now? I'm
Yeah.
doing the best that I can, but there's nothing else to do, right?
Yeah, so Jake Lowen,
There.
obviously, I miss him already. He's now moved to Manitoba. Hope he's watching this, and we miss you, brother. We're all good friends. He said to me, he said, I think you've got a little bit too much ambition for this place. You should try out something in sales. And I
And
never
he
did.
had just started sales.
Yep. Yeah, he had left, and it was like almost a year to the day that he left that I went and got a job at a car dealership, and it was in Tillsonburg, so we'd sometimes get together for coffee, and he was doing pretty good, and then I just kind of really honed in and changed my mindset a bit about how being my own business within a business, and I just want to take it to whatever level I can, ethically.
That's the thing, right?
That's the thing, yeah. Like there is, there is a lot of bad habits you can pick up on the way, and
Well,
some of
almost
those I did.
everybody is aware of that stereotype of salesmen just being
Sleazy,
pushy and conniving and manipulating, always
deceitful.
trying to find some angle to
Yeah.
take advantage of their
Yeah.
customers, right?
Yeah, you don't need to operate that at all to be successful. In fact, my coaches for the best car salespeople in the world. I'm part of a pretty tight knit group of some really heavy hitters in the automotive industry, and they're all 100% ethical. They say you don't need to do that. Don't ever get involved in those bad habits. Um, present offer all the value you can to your customers. Serve them, give them all the information. Always let them know that you're going to be 100% transparent throughout the whole process, and upon doing that and giving them a proper experience, you're owed referrals. You've earned the referrals. So when you ask for the referrals, you can get referrals. And people just want to keep coming back to you because buying a car is stressful and it takes long, and I think that's our own fault for doing it that way. So I'm hoping to change the game in our area. And I'm just having a lot of fun doing it. I've always said I'm going to keep doing this until it's no longer fun anymore. Right now I'm having fun. So
One of the reasons I've started this podcast, and I've shared it many times here, is I've called it In Light of the Gospel because, and I mentioned this on the John Jansen talk, is that any work that you do, if you're building society, if you're helping to feed people, if you're helping to house people, if you're helping to clothe people, if you're helping people in transportation so that they can get to their jobs, you are doing the Lord's work.
yeah.
So sometimes people separate this idea. They think carnal work, spiritual work. You know, a preacher does spiritual work, everybody else is doing carnal work. But it's not the case at all.
That's right.
You can do very spiritual work in a quote unquote carnal atmosphere because you're serving someone, like the Bible says, whatsoever ye do in word or in deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus. So if I'm doing it in the name of the Lord Jesus, it would be as if, say, I'm a representative of Canada and I'm going to India. This sounds familiar. Trudeau was there a few years ago.
Yeah.
He should properly represent the Canadian culture and the Canadian people and say, look, I am the face and the name of the Canadian people. And so the same way, we as Christians now, we carry the name of Christ with us. And so when we think of what Christ has done for us, how he served us when we weren't worthy of it, and how he purchased us when we were sinful, you can take that into sales and think, how can I serve this person? Even if they badmouth me, even if they never give me a referral, even if they, on and on and on it goes, I'm going to serve them the way Christ served me. And I'm going to do it in the name of Jesus as if I'm selling cars in Jesus' name. And it might sound a little bit cliche almost.
Yeah. I thought that for a long time too, and then it just, I don't know, at one point it just stuck to me. I'm like, why am I not serving my customers as unto the Lord? Because that's what the scripture tells me to do.
What do you mean you were not?
I just like I just thought it as very carnal work, just like what you said. I'm just selling cars on Sunday when
Trying
I
to
go.
make money.
Yeah, on Sunday when I go and I teach the children's lesson once every other month. I preach out of the Bible. I'm in the rotation there. I thought that's my spiritual work, and being a good husband to my wife. I didn't think that this was actually spiritual work, but that's the way I look at it now. Is I'm going to keep serving my customers as unto the Lord, as if I was literally taking care of the Lord and his angels and his hosts himself, and and that's just the way I do it. And I just looking forward to the opportunity for the next customer and the next customer. I want everybody to have a good experience.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Make sure they're looked after.
That's the proper way to do work, I think, is
Yeah.
to think of it as a service where you're not. And the funny thing is this also leads to the most success.
Yeah.
When you read those books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, the principles in there are basic Bible principles, like
Yeah.
love people, be honest, be upright. Don't ever try to take advantage. But you can do those things with the eye of thinking, I'm going to make a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I make a bunch of money? Oh, I got to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to fall short.
Yeah.
So to me, it seems like if you have your heart actually genuinely captured by the goodness of God, then it will be easy to say, you know what, even if I don't make money, this is how I'm going to serve. And I know some pastors who have been serving for years and years and never have gotten a dime for it. And so they do it because they want to do it. They do it because their heart has been captured by the goodness of God. And now if they got payment, it wouldn't change their heart's attitude, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But some people sign up for it and put out resumes and try to get a job, and
they fly their family out to different areas and stuff. It's different way of serving that I don't quite understand for sure. But.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say? Thing you want to direct people to, or something about marriage, something about work, something about your personal story?
I might be drawing a couple of blanks here. But
Getting put on the spot.
Maybe I glazed over my life and my situation a bit too much, and I don't want people to think that I'm hiding anything in my life. But I would say for men, don't keep any secrets from your wife. It's so detrimental to your marriage in the future. And so I did, and obviously that caused some problems. But just before we got married and after, and I can testify to this day that our marriage is stronger than ever. I don't have any secrets from my wife, and we're an open book with each other, and is stronger than ever. And there's always issues, but we work through them because we keep God in the midst. We go together in God in prayer every single day. We pray together. Some days we forget and we talk about it. We're like, why didn't we pray together? We should have come to God this morning and just brought our day before Him, asking for Him to be with us and bless us. So that's what I would say. I've just been married for almost 4 years now. We're going to Vancouver to celebrate our 4-year anniversary this week. Going to take a week off there. And then as far as business goes, I mean, that just like what we just talked about, right? Whatever you're going to do, imagine as if you're literally doing it for God. So our sovereign God that created the world and everything in it. Imagine you're literally doing your work for Him. You actually have to produce your best product, your best level of service and care, and that's whether you're a construction contractor or you're a salesperson, insurance broker, or if you're in drafting like yourself, right? I mean,
my boss actually, Tony Wall, he used to say, I'm here to serve. He used to say it all the time, and it kind of changed my perspective of how you do work. It's not, can you service me with some money? Like I need money. No, I'm here to do whatever you need to get your job done, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good attitude.
Yeah, I'm excited for the future. Lots of opportunities here, obviously, and the political climate and everything with COVID and stuff is going to change drastically in the next couple of months, and there's a lot of people who are full of anxiety and nerves. I can say for one thing, I'm not nervous. I'm focusing on the grace of God because ultimately that's where I have peace, and there's a lot of people that could use that sort of confidence and peace in the future, and so I think it's really important that Christian men like us need to lead our homes and be that beacon of light, because I think that things might get a little bit dark here in the next year or so in Ontario.
This is one thing you and I talked about a little bit ago, is that let's say everything fell apart. Say you have to have a COVID vaccine and you're just not willing to get it for the sake of you and your wife and reproductive issues and stuff. And all of a sudden, all that you have built kind of crumbled down. You said to me at that point, that's fine. I can go back to swinging a hammer. I can do whatever it needs to be. So to me, that's another thing about Christianity and understanding who you are, that you don't make your success an idol, right? I know it'd be hard to swallow to lose all of that,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like I'm doing this because I know God, because He is who He is.
Yeah.
I can serve well.
Yeah.
It's not like if you were to do this just for the sake of success and that crumbled, anything that would make you devastated is become an idol. If anything that you lost would make you devastated, it has become an idol in your life, right?
So yeah, that is the case. I mean, don't I guess me and a customer were talking about this the other day, or actually my orthodontist, because she was asking me about shots and stuff like that. I said it seems like that's now one of those couple of things you can't talk about. There was religion, politics, and that's typically the things you leave out. But now it's religion, politics, and vaccines.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like that's just. People would say that's a silly hill to die on, but I'm willing to take my beliefs to whatever end. And like I said, I mean, there's a good opportunity to build a massive business here, and it's growing consistently every single month. And I'm more driven than ever. I'm really excited for the future. But if that all had to come to an end, I'd be okay with it. I'd be okay with it. I'd liquefy some of the expense, because we have a certain lifestyle that we're living now. If we have to downgrade and sell one of our cars or do this or do that, whatever.
It
Not
is
a
what
big
it is.
deal. Yeah.
It's not the hope and joy of
No.
life, right? It is just icing on the cake, so to speak. So
I really just like our community, and that's really it. Our community is something that's very special to me. So I really appreciate the people in our community. There's a lot of good people in this community, and there's a lot of good ways that we can serve each other and be a blessing. And I'm looking for opportunities everywhere to be a blessing to my community, whatever that looks like. So
right on.
Yeah.
Seems like a good enough place to close it. I know
Yeah.
we could go into many different rabbit trails here yet, but I appreciate you coming down and taking the time to have a talk with me, and I hope everyone else appreciates it as well. Maybe if you could, just subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it with your friends. Anybody who knows Tony might be interested to hear a bit more of his story, so thanks again.